When I bought the countryside house on the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, it wasn't just a property. It was a piece of history. The log cabin, built in 1887 by a German farmer, bore marks of the Civil War, bullet scars on the barn, and a cellar that once sheltered fugitive slaves. But what stole my heart most was the 19th century stone wall bordering the 10-acre land. This wasn't just any wall. Each hand-placed rock told a story. According to county archives, it was built by the original owner, Jeremiah Carter, using stones from a nearby river. It even appeared on an 1893 map as Carter's Wall. And now it was mine. Everything changed when Pinecrest Heights, the new luxury subdivision, sprouted behind my property. Overnight, identical houses painted in modern gray with artificial lawns appeared. A month after moving in, I received the first HOA letter. Dear neighbor, your stone wall violates Pinecrest Heights aesthetic standards. Remove it or face a $1,000 weekly fine. I laughed, assuming it was a mistake. Neighbor? My home had stood there decades before their land was even swampland. I mailed them a copy of the historical registry, a photo of the antique map, and even a local newspaper article mentioning the wall. Their response was another icier letter. The Standards Committee does not recognize pre-existing unauthorized structures. You have 14 days to comply. I decided to confront them. I attended an HOA meeting at their sleek clubhouse. Patricia Whitlock, the president, a 50-year-old woman with a haircut as sharp as her attitude, didn't let me finish. Your wall is a hazard, she said, holding a blurry photo where one stone protruded 2 inches. A child could scrape themselves. I reminded her there were no children on my property, just deer and raccoons. Besides, I added, my land isn't part of your HOA. She flashed a frosty smile. All neighbors must collaborate to uphold the community's value. Tensions escalated. Unannounced inspectors began showing up, men with tablets, measuring the wall and photographing my house. One afternoon, I caught one inside my property. Looking for something? I asked, pointing to the no trespassing sign behind him. Board orders, he mumbled, scurrying off. That night, I upgraded the security cameras and hung a new sign. Private property, historical landmark. Trespassers will be sued. But nothing stopped them. One October morning, I returned from the farmer's market to the smell of dust. Rounding the driveway curve, I saw smoke. My wall. Where there had once been a solid moss-covered stone barrier, now lay rubble. The excavator, branded with Pinecrest Heights, reversed as a man in an orange vest yelled, "Job's done, boss!" I ran, stumbling over shattered stones. "Who gave you permission?" I roared. The operator pointed to an order signed by Patricia. Demolition due to structural risk. I checked the cameras. At 6 a.m., the excavator had rolled in, like a tank. Patricia watched from her Mercedes, sunglasses on, coffee in hand. In the footage, her voice crackled. "Make it quick before he gets back." The stones, some split in half, lay like broken bones. Among the debris, I found a piece of the laminated 1893 map I'd hung in the barn, now torn. That's when I knew this wasn't just about a wall. It was war, and I wouldn't let them erase my history without a fight. The next day, Patricia left an envelope in my mailbox. $5,000 fine for non-compliance. Remove debris within 48 hours. I shredded the letter, but one word from her message burned in my mind. Consequences. If they wanted consequences, they'd get them. Just not the kind they expected. As the dust settled, I dialed an old friend, a lawyer specializing in historic preservation. "I need this to hurt more than a scraped knee," I said. He replied, "Jeremiah Carter didn't stack that wall for some HOA tyrants to bulldoze. We'll rebuild it and bury them in paperwork." The war had only just begun. After the demolition, the silence of the rubble was deafening. But this wasn't the time to mourn shattered stones. It was time to rebuild with justice. My lawyer, Marcus, arrived with a folder bursting with state laws and a wolfish grin. Carter's Wall is protected under North Carolina's Heritage Code, Article 12.7. Historic structures on private land are inviolable, he said, tapping a paragraph highlighted in red. But let's teach them a lesson they'll never forget. While Marcus drafted the lawsuit, I had a more visual plan. I hired Joe, a local stonemason whose great-grandfather had worked on the original wall. I want to rebuild it stone by stone, I told him, but with a message. Joe, a man of calloused hands and dry humor, chuckled. Like carving "go to hell" in Latin? I nearly laughed, but showed him the designs. Each stone would bear an engraved fragment of the historic preservation law. I want every stone to scream they're wrong, I explained. We worked under portable floodlights at night, cameras, recording every move. Joe chiseled the words, Historic Property, Law 12.7, protected by the state, intact since 1887. The stones, now transformed into stone-bound manifestos, gleamed under the moonlight. But the final touch came from Marcus's suggestion, an electric fence inside the wall. If they touch a stone, they'll get a reminder of 10,000 volts, he said, wiring it to a transformer hidden behind a centuries-old oak. At dawn, Patricia arrived in her Mercedes, flanked by 2 HOA enforcers. You think you can mock us? She spat, pointing at the engraved stones. Joe, not looking up from the wet mortar, muttered, Ma'am, this ain't mockery. It's a monument and a mirror. Patricia, red with rage, whipped out her phone. This is vandalism, and that fence is illegal. I flashed the permits. The fence, installed 6 inches inside my property line, met every regulation. Plus, I added, the vandalism is sponsored by the state archives. See the seal? She crumpled the permit and stormed off, but not without hissing. This isn't over. That night, the cameras caught her inspectors skulking around the wall. One, wearing gardening gloves, touched a stone and jumped like he'd been snake-bit. The footage, uploaded by Sunrise, went viral. HOA electrocuted by history, the memes jeered. Pinecrest Heights residents began whispering, was paying HOA fees to fight a 19th century wall worth it? The next day, another HOA letter arrived. Remove the engravings or face legal action. Marcus read it and smirked. They claim the words Law 12.7 are offensive. Let's decorate their egos with more legal poetry. That afternoon, we added a new stone engraved with Penal Code Article 245, trespassing up to 3 years in jail. As the sun dipped behind the rebuilt wall, I switched on the electric fence. Its low hum was music to my ears. Patricia could send all the letters she wanted. But now, every stone had teeth and an appetite. This war, after all, was just getting started. The viral video of the HOA enforcer getting zapped by the wall didn't just break the internet, it shattered Patricia's facade of control. By noon the next day, local news vans crowded Pinecrest Heights' manicured entrance, their cameras, trained on my rebuilt wall. Reporters dubbed it the Great Wall of Asheville, while online trolls photoshopped Patricia's face onto historical villains. But the real battle was just beginning. Patricia struck back with a lawsuit so flimsy it could have been written on toilet paper. Emotional distress, defamation, and unauthorized monument construction. Marcus, my lawyer, cackled as he read it. They're throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, but this spaghetti's about to electrocute them. The HOA's next move was sneakier. One rainy night, the power to the fence flickered and died. Security footage showed a shadowy figure in a Pinecrest Heights hoodie tampering with the transformer. But what they didn't know? I'd installed a backup generator and motion-activated spotlights that lit up the saboteur like a Broadway star. The cameras captured it all. Frank, Patricia's nephew and HOA compliance officer, frozen like a raccoon in headlights. Wire cutters in hand. I didn't call the cops. Instead, I printed 500 flyers with Frank's embarrassed face and the caption, "Pinecrest Heights, where rules are for suckers." I plastered them on every mailbox in the subdivision. By dawn, the neighborhood Facebook group was a dumpster fire. "My HOA dues paid for this," one resident posted. "We're funding criminals," another raged. Patricia retaliated by sicking code enforcement on me. 2 grim-faced inspectors arrived demanding to verify the wall's structural integrity. But Joe, the stonemason, had anticipated this. He'd embedded a time capsule in the wall's foundation, filled with 19th century tools, the torn 1893 map, and a notarized letter from the state historian certifying its authenticity. "Try to condemn this," I said, handing them the certificate. "And you'll be condemning North Carolina's heritage." The inspectors left empty-handed, but Patricia wasn't done. At the next HOA meeting, she played her trump card, a tearful speech about protecting community values from anarchists. But her performance crashed when a silver-haired woman stood up, Mrs. Green, an 80-year-old widow and Pinecrest's longest resident. "I remember this wall," she said, voice trembling. "My grandfather picnicked here. You're not preserving values. You're erasing them." The room erupted in applause. Even Patricia's loyalists shifted uncomfortably. That night, as I reviewed security footage, I noticed something odd. Cars arriving at Patricia's mansion at odd hours. Zooming in, I spotted contractors hauling unmarked boxes. A little digging revealed her landscaping project was actually an unpermitted pool, paid for with HOA funds. Marcus grinned like a shark smelling blood. Let's see how she likes fines. By week's end, the wall wasn't just a symbol, it was a rallying cry. Neighbors I'd never met left bouquets of wildflowers at its base. A high school history. Class petitioned to make it a field trip destination. And the final blow? A viral TikTok trend where people zapped fake HOA letters with DIY electric pens, shouting, "Don't mess with Carter's wall." Patricia's empire of rules was crumbling. But as I stood by the wall, its electric hum harmonizing with the cicadas, I knew she'd fight dirtier. The real war wasn't in courtrooms or memes. It was in the shadows she thought she owned. And shadows, I'd learned, hate the light. The discovery came on a rain-soaked afternoon, buried in a dusty box of Jeremiah Carter's letters at the state archives. Marcus's fingers trembled as he held the 1901 deed. "Listen to this," he said, voice cracking with triumph. "In perpetuity, the land herein shall remain bound to the preservation of Carter's wall. Should said wall suffer harm, ownership reverts to the state of North Carolina." The clause glowed like a dagger on the yellowed paper. Patricia's demolition had unwittingly triggered a time bomb. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Marcus presented the deed. Patricia's lawyer, a slick-suited shark, scoffed. "A relic. This clause is irrelevant to modern zoning." But the judge, a stern woman with a framed photo of Appalachian trails on her desk, silenced him with a glare. "The law doesn't expire," she declared. Then Marcus dropped his masterpiece, bank records showing Patricia had funneled HOA funds into her husband's failing construction company. Gasps echoed like thunder. The verdict was seismic. Pinecrest Heights, built on stolen legacy, was ordered demolished. Bulldozers arrived at dawn, their jaws crunching through gray McMansions as residents watched, some cheering, others weeping. Patricia, stripped of her blazer and cuffed, met the protagonist's eyes one last time, a silent scream swallowed by the roar of justice. But the true victory came after. Former HOA members, guilt-heavy and humbled, arrived with tools and wildflower seedlings. Mrs. Green, her hands steadier than ever, placed the first reconstructed stone. "For my grandfather," she whispered. Even Frank, Patricia's nephew, showed up, handing over a box of his aunt's hidden documents. Make sure she stays gone, he muttered. On the day the wall was designated a national monument, the sun bathed the stones in gold. A bronze plaque now read, "Carter's Wall, where history outlived greed." As the crowd cheered, Marcus handed the protagonist a letter. "From the state," he grinned. "They're making you the official caretaker, salary included." The protagonist knelt, running a hand over the engraving of Jeremiah Carter's name. Somewhere, he swore, the old farmer was laughing. The cicadas hummed their approval, and the electric fence, now a museum piece, sizzled once, as if winking. Epilogue. The fields where Pinecrest Heights once stood now bloom with native grasses. School children visit the wall tracing the laws, etched in stone. And Patricia? Her mugshot, forever paired with the meme HOA versus history, remains Asheville's favorite cautionary tale.